Oh, isn't that beautiful? What an artistic piece.
So hello, welcome. Good to see you all. So my name is Joe. I'm an English faculty member here.
I'm Lauren Hazard. I'm a librarian.
And can you just do introductions really quickly so we know each other?
I'll start. I'm Johnny Urbina. I'm Director of Student Services, and I oversee the Office of Student Life.
Justin Nicholas, accounting instructor.
Welcome. Good to see you.
I talked to you yesterday. I'm Bob Marovitz from HIA.
Welcome.
I'm Mohammed Salami, I teach physics.
Physics. Excellent. Welcome.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start by setting up a scenario that was my experience the first few years of teaching. So I'm an English teacher, and I was an adjunct, and so of course, you know, when you get the job, they hand you a huge book. I didn't bring my example, but just imagine something that weighs about 15 pounds. It's like a jacket, right? Hardcover. And I used the book faithfully. And after a few semesters, I had a few problems with it. One was that I almost felt like I wanted readings for my students, English students, who were engaging and up to date. And the book really limited me in my ability to do that. So at some point, it felt like my instruction was as good as it could have been if I could have just chosen my own readings. Secondly, the book was $110. And I think we've talked, and maybe you've had the experience, a lot of students didn't buy the book, right? I would have all these students who say, my financial aid didn't come in, I just don't have the money, do I really need this book? Can you please make me copies? And I would try, because it turns out some of the readings were actually online for free, so that was convenient. But it became a retention issue because a student without the book ultimately couldn't be successful in the class. And then just the fact that everyone, these community college students, many of them, it was during the recession, in fact, many of them who were really needing every dollar that they could retain, that they were paying all this money for a book, wasn't the most pleasant thing. So I figured something out. But I'll tell you about that later, after we tell you who we are. Maybe you want this.
Yeah, thanks. So Joe and I met shortly after Joe came here to Triton, and we formed what we call the low cost, no cost subcommittee. And so it's the subcommittee out of the Student Development Committee here in our shared governance structure and then the back of the Academic Senate. And really our mission is to improve student instructor access to high quality, affordable learning materials here at Triton. And so when we talk about connecting instructors and students with high quality, low cost or no cost material, what we're really looking at is a variety of ways that instructors can incorporate this into their courses. And so we always advocate that one size does not fit all in this process. And so we support instructors in a spectrum of ways of incorporating these learning resources into their classroom. So for some, we're going to talk about some of these options in just a moment, but for some instructors, this has meant adopting a fully open educational resource textbook in their class. For some instructors, it might look a little bit different, and so we understand depending on the subject discipline that you're in and the learning materials that are going to best serve your students, that this is really a flexible approach to incorporating these types of materials into the classroom. And so we're talking, kind of the subcommittee has kind of set these standards for here at Triton. So we're talking about low-cost alternatives. We did some surveys, we asked students, asked instructors, and we set that definition at $75 or less per course. So we decided that if you are below $75 for your learning materials, that this would be considered a low-cost alternative. And so, like for example, in Joe's class, right, his standard textbook was 110, right? So kind of bring it under that $75 threshold. And so some examples that we found of instructors doing this across campus and how we've kind of encouraged instructors to reconsider some of the learning materials in their class is some things can be as simple as binding, right? Informing students that there are other options than the brand new hardcover for your textbook, right? Introducing them at the beginning of your class, saying that having the bookstore staff have actually supply maybe the paperback copy or the loose leaf copy where students can just put it into a 3-ring binder. Something as simple as asking the bookstore to do that can be really helpful to students, or at least letting them know that those other options are out there for the exact same textbook, the exact same learning materials. Also, we've had some instructors on campus who've had some success with negotiating with publishers. So saying like, hey, this textbook is getting too pricey for my students, I'm starting to look at other materials, can you work with us to lower that cost? So there have been some departments and faculty who have had success with that. Same thing kind of with binding is, letting students know if there's an ebook available for the textbook. So sometimes going fully digital can be a much lower cost option. And then also informing them of some of the rental services, right, that are available, or just letting them know if they can look on Amazon, find a used copy, right? Just giving our students the knowledge to make those choices and kind of getting some of that lower cost learning materials to them. Now, when we talk about no cost, kind of the definition we say is free, right, in quotation marks, we say it's free to students. Not all of these materials are free in the sense that they don't have any cost to them, but they're free to students. There's no upfront cost to students. So let me kind of give you some examples to explain. The first one, right, I'm a librarian, so the first thing I had to do was write our institutional resources, the library resources. So the library, in our budget, we pay a ton of money for students to have access, right, to all the books, to electronic resources, databases, all of those learning materials, but there's no upfront cost to students. So even though they're not technically free resources, the institution takes on the burden of the cost, and so there's no upfront cost to students. So I work with faculty all the time in identifying some of the institutional resources that can become learning materials in your class. We also talk about using open educational resources. So open educational resources are resources that, again, are free, right, online, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't any cost to them. Most of these resources were funded by some kind of grant work, either through the federal government or private foundations like the Hewlett-Packard Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So they definitely still have a cost to them. They were paid for, but there's no upfront cost to students. Also things like the public domain, so works that were created before 1923. Also all government resources, federal government resources fall into the public domain. So those are free, right? As taxpayers, we can access that information. And then the other thing in the library, the service that we advocate for faculty to use is our course reserves. So if you're not familiar with our course reserves, that's in the library, our collection of textbooks. And so and historically, these have been faculty driven, so faculty will bring a copy of their textbook to the library, and we will hold it and allow students to use it in the library. And so this, at least there's a free copy available for students to use while they're waiting for financial aid, right? And then if they are really strategic, they can make it the entire semester without having to purchase a copy because there's one in the library for them to use. So we definitely really emphasize that. Traditionally been faculty driven. As the library, we've seen that as a deep need for our students, so we're starting to allocate more and more resources towards purchasing textbooks for our students. So there's at least one copy freely available to them. So as a committee, we've created a guide that is housed in the library's website, and I can pull up the live version in a few moments. But we call it this low cost, no cost textbook alternatives guide. And so this guide, we have kind of curated a lot of these open materials, so these freely available materials for faculty to kind of explore, investigate, and potentially use. And so on this guide, we've kind of scaffolded it. Our approach has been there are all sorts of course materials you can search for that are free and available to use online without a copyright. And so we've opened that up as a ton of different course materials, things like PowerPoints, homework assignments, lots of information. The open textbooks are specifically collections of textbook length materials that are, again, open and freely available to use, often created by faculty members who were working with grant money to do that. And then we also have this tab here for resources by discipline. And so as a committee, we have curated different resources by specific discipline. So either faculty are currently using those resources, or we've identified as one that would be particularly helpful for courses that are taught here at Triton's campus. And so we've started creating this guide here. It's constantly being updated, right? It's a homegrown kind of curation. So as we interact with faculty, we update this guide.
Where do you get the information? I mean,
So how do you get to this page?
no.
Or-
How do you get to? I'm trying to ask.
Yeah.
How do you get to the information that the course uses?
So for
You mean for the students,
like
right? How do students access it?
Yes.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
really good question.
Yeah.
Joe's gonna cover that. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So we
Yeah.
typically advocate Blackboard. Yeah. But here, this is kind of to support faculty exploration and finding these resources and identifying what's going to be the most helpful to you in your classroom. But then, yes, then we support also faculty delivering this to their students. Joe just interrupted.
No?
When you're ready.
Those are all the things. Oh, I'll talk about this.
You do.
So this is a relatively new initiative on our campus, and so it's really collaborative. It's really building. It's not like Lauren and I just like get on computers and be like, let's find all the open educational resources there are. It's really been a process of faculty members in different disciplines letting us know what's out there. We'll do some research together based on what your needs are. And so some of the success stories that have come out of this, the most recent one that I consider a big one is Speech 100, where we had a workshop. It must have been about 2 semesters ago. And then last semester, 2 full-time speech faculty members implemented free to students text. It had covered so many sections that collectively these 2 instructors saved the students, I want to say, over $12,000 in a semester. And from what I hear from them, it's been really successful. They feel like it's improved their instruction. And I saw the students' survey results, and the students love it. And so that felt like a huge success. Red Ribbon 101 is what I teach, and there's actually a lot of us nowadays that are using free materials. It's become really big in our department. I'll talk more about my personal experience with it in a little bit. I'll just say I love it for now. And then actually to sort of show how this is becoming more a part of the culture on this campus, for a long time it felt like full-time faculty members had a little bit more academic freedom in this way than some adjunct faculty members. So in my department, what we did was I collaborated with the chair to create a Blackboard shell that is really the same format as the physical textbook, but now any faculty member, including adjunct faculty members, including someone who was hired tomorrow, could just get access to the shell and just use it. And so this is increasing access. A lot of this is just about increasing access for instructors and also for students.
So the last one I'll just mention too is kind of how this got started here on this campus specifically, is that the horticulture department had a grant from the federal government, the tax grant. And so this is just an example. We were one of those examples of recipients of a grant who produced course materials as a result, and that was our horticulture department. So they received a grant to develop fully online certificates that utilized open resources, and so did not have a textbook tied to it. And so our horticulture department was really one of those recipients of that grant. It's just as an example of, they're not necessarily free, but it's faculty develop these materials as a result of grants or other institutional resources.
So one thing that we like to see is that students are saving money over time. So you'll see this chart ends at spring 2017, and what it's illustrating is just how every semester, other than a blip in summer, this has gotten bigger. And then if you go to the next page, our current count of how much money we've saved students is $792,976. And at the rate we're going, it means we're going to be very close to getting to $1 million at the end of the semester. We don't know if it's going to be this semester or next semester.
But we're having a party.
Or having a party. So stay tuned. Party. But this is all due to more and more faculty members putting in the work, because we know that it's actually a lot of work just to change textbooks, right? Because sometimes it has deep implications of how you structure your course when you teach. And then there's another layer when you're increasing the accessibility to it. And so I think this number is really a tribute to all the instructors who have put in a lot of work and collaborated with us to make this happen. Hey, my experience. Okay, so I wanted to tell you what I did, and actually, because you asked that question, Bob, I think I'll show you guys too on my Blackboard page. So let me pull this up for you right now so you can see it, because I want you to see it from the student's perspective. I don't always pull this up, but I think it's a good thing.
Oh, you might have to log because we're recording. You might have to.
Oh,
Okay.
All right. So let's say that you're in my class. First day of class, you'd be thinking to yourself, why did we not have to buy a textbook for this class? This is weird. Mr. Klein, I didn't buy a textbook. Is that okay? And I say, good. I'm glad you didn't buy a textbook because it's all going to be available to you without money. And then you say, that's amazing. I didn't have money to buy a textbook. I love it, right? But what do we do? And so here's what it would be from your perspective as a student. I would say, okay, here's your first homework assignment. First, we got to get you on Blackboard, right? Once you're on Blackboard, what you're going to do is go to readings, and then you're going to see a list. And the list, these are things that I curated for the students. This list right here of readings, I believe there's 13 of them right now, this is the textbook for my students for this semester. If you click on each one, it opens up. This is from an open educational resource, which is something that Excelsior University put together. It's an entire online textbook, but I find that format overwhelming to students. And so what I do is I just wanted them to have something about sentence fragments, and so I give them this. Here's the student's first assignment. They access this whole list. They open each one. They go to the library, where Lauren is, and they print them all out. Why do I have them print them out? Because I'm old school. Maybe I look 21, I don't know, but I didn't hear about the internet until I was in 7th grade. And so I think I like have my students read on paper. I like them to have the papers in class. I like them to annotate. And so their first homework assignment is to print everything out. This semester, I went easy on them. It's like 50 pages. It's like $5, maybe $6 to print them out in the library. And then they put them in a little binder, which I recycle each semester. So I'll give them binders at the beginning and then take my binders back at the end. But it's like this is their textbook. And so after that first week of class, everyone has access to it. They all have this little thing that they bring to class with them, and we go on as if we had a traditional textbook. So that's how they would access it. And I'll tell you a little more about my process, but any questions about that? You're asking how they access it. Does it make
I'm
sense?
just trying to think in my head how my students would really get into that, because I'm trying to get them to remember to bring their syllabuses, let alone copy something in a book and bring the book with them. I mean, something like that. I mean, because some of my students, unfortunately, just look at your syllabus. Oh, can you give me another one? And that's like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
They lose something. And I've come across that for 16 years where my students are just, for some reason they're careless.
Yeah.
So something like this might work, but it's...
You say that is online. Now, the publishers put on online books. They could buy them. The same book that we use, you could buy it from them or something. But that one's online, you say.
Right. So So
all they have to do is print it, pay the 10 cents per copy or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, let me talk about my process for a second, and I think it'll answer that.
Did you put it together, or did a publisher put that together?
I put it together.
Because they tried that in psychology. They tried to get a book-free, was it a book-free online class or something like that? They wanted to go book-free, so somebody was working on creating an online class without any book.
Right.
Everything was there, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you think about classes without a traditional textbook, one of the things that instructors do is some of them use a whole open educational resource, and that's something that was created by a foundation.
Bibliography. They just look it up on.
No, it's actually so think of it as an online textbook, except no one has a copyright on it, and so you can use it without any problem.
Okay.
Right. And so some instructors will do that, and that'll be their whole textbook for the course. Like if I wanted to, I could find a Rhetoric 101 open educational resource. There's a number of them out there, and I could just say this is my textbook for the entire course. What I showed you is a combo that I curated where I found readings that I could use from around the internet. My process is actually discovering that a lot of what was in the textbook students were paying $110 for, you can find online. So I give them links in Blackboard to those things. So I curated that for them, and then I also have some things from an open educational resource. So there's a flexibility about what the instructor's needs are there. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, when we're talking about the textbooks that are online here, what we're really advocating for is either those open textbooks or textbooks that have been licensed under Creative Commons license. And this means that they're not traditional publishers, right? They are faculty who have created these learning materials as a result of like a grant, right, or a foundation, and they release them out under either an open license, so no copyright, or a copyright license called a Creative Commons license that really just says you're free to use them as much in print and share, but you just have to give me attribution for it. And so it's a different type of copyright. It's not under traditional copyright. And these aren't traditional publishers.
I kind of like just a book that they can, because he had a problem with the syllabus, only 2 weeks. I had somebody ask him years ago about one on Thanksgiving. It was a little strange, but I thought it was the Twilight Zone thing, you know. The semester had 2 more weeks to go and it still wanted the syllabus. But downloading one off the internet sounds fine.
Yeah.
Instead of having them give them a bibliography, as you say, that they can go find the links and all of that. I think that may be a little too labor intensive for some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 2 thoughts about that. One is just the soft skills of learning to be a student and be a part of the culture of college and bring a textbook to class, keep up on readings. I mean, that is a challenge, I think, for a lot of us to instill those. Something we need to do. And then in terms of short-term incentives, what I do with the readings in that book is that I give my students 3-minute quizzes at the beginning of class. And they're easy, but also you fail them if you didn't do the reading. And I do that because if my students don't do the reading, we have an awful class because it's so discussion-based. Right? And you probably have that experience too. It falls flat if they haven't done the reading. And so, yeah, I do 2-question, really quick quizzes right away. And it's for points. And so it really incentivizes students to read. So that's kind of one idea if they're out there. I don't remember what my other thing was I was going to say. Responding to. The idea of just having the whole textbook that you can structure your syllabus around, that is the format more that you'll find when you go to that library guide that Lauren showed you. So do you know the web address?
Yeah, so I'll show you after I go over the PowerPoint, but the library's website, library.triton.edu, and then the guide that I showed you is library.triton.edu/LCNC. So I can show you the guide and I can kind of walk you through it. But that is that guide to get back to kind of those curated resources that will be helpful depending on your discipline.
Yeah. Oh, and as far as access, so like I said, I like having them printed out because I'm old school. But one of my colleagues in the English department does something similar to me, except she really prefers that the students just access them on their devices that they all have. And part of the advantage of that, this is not my approach, but part of the advantage for her is, well, they always have a device.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way a student can say that they don't have access to the syllabus.
Can you do Blackboard really on a cell phone?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Isn't that a little too? It's like watching a movie watching a sporting event on your cell phone. It just, I don't know. I think it's more of a tablet type of thing better than the people at Barnes and Noble
They
are doing.
can access that.
So better.
Yeah.
So that small, it's watching it on your iWatch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it is a way that some instructors do it, depending on your comfortability with technology in your classroom.
My younger students tend to prefer their cell phone because they can carry it in their pocket versus a tablet or a laptop. And even video game consoles have now reduced to the size of a cell phone.
Yeah.
So like the Nintendo Switch is now the size of that. So.
And those new iPhones have like 6.5 inch screens.
Phones are getting bigger.
They're pretty big. They are pretty big. You'd be shocked the number of students who want to write essays on their phones. So on Google Docs. So
They feel more comfortable with the tech.
They do, yep.
with the size. Oh, they're
With the
so
keyboard.
fast.
Yeah.
Unreal. So just a little bit about my process, just so you can sort of see what the steps were that I took. So OER is Open Educational Resource. So I started with, here is the basic textbook material. Because I needed grammar materials, I needed MLA, like how to cite things, and I needed some stuff about just basic writing skills. So I found an open educational resource, but then the second piece that I put with it were online readings that I could link to through Blackboard. So my first step was discovering what it is I wanted the students to read during my course. From there, I worked with Lauren, our resident librarian, because there was copyright. There were copyright issues. There were some things that I had as PDFs that were copied out of books that I needed to figure out if I could use them. There's one that I couldn't use because it does need to be above board copyright-wise. But the good thing is that Lauren is so good at figuring out legal ways to use things, right? And so
I'm not alone.
she's not a librarian, just librarian, not just a librarian that is really good and also helping find things. I mean, I had at least one reading that I was like, I don't even know where to find this, not let alone can I use it, and we were able to access it. Good institution. So that was an important piece of the process. I curated them in the Blackboard shell. I used Blackboard to deliver it to the students. And then, as I mentioned, I structured my class so that the very first homework assignment is printing them out. And in a 101 class, I'll have 98 to 100% participation in this. I was nervous the first time. I thought I would get people not doing it, but for a 20-point assignment, the first week of class, when pretty much everyone still has some kind of motivation in them, it just works. They do it. And I mentioned the $6, but actually they get $10 of free printing each semester. So up front, they're not needing any cash on them at all to do this. So that makes things go well. So here's what I like about it. You probably guessed, but I always come at this from the perspective of it improves instruction. If this was my primary motivation, I care more about my class being a good class even than the saving the money. For me, it improves instruction because it increases the flexibility so much with what I can teach. I changed at least one of the themes in my course, or I changed at least one theme every 2 semesters, and I couldn't do that if I was reliant on McGraw-Hill or whoever. I can give them readings that are up to date, that are current, that are engaging, that connect with them, that resonate with their cultural backgrounds. There's so many things that I can do now that I couldn't when I was just reliant on a textbook. So this is what I love. This is my heart and why I'm so passionate about this, and all instructors having access to this. Beyond that, and this is anecdotal, but I believe that it improves retention. Now, we're going to be doing institutional research to really find out in the future once we have enough data. But anecdotally, it improves retention because I always had students who did not do well in the course because they didn't have the textbook. And now that's not a problem. So it feels like 2 or 3 students in each class each semester adds up to a noticeable difference in improvement in retention. And I like that it saves them money, right? You saw those big numbers. That's money that's in their pockets. And for our cash-strapped students, I think that means a lot. So that's what I like about it. So here's our question for you. We've talked a lot. To kind of get discussion going, I mean, you can say whatever, any comments, reflections, any questions that you have. And if you need incentive, here are some ideas, and we're kind of wondering, what are your biggest concerns? Like if you think about incorporating a low-cost or no-cost alternative in your class, what pops up for you as like a barrier to that?
My students frequently talk to each other. I'm in a group chat with them, so they're constantly asking, "How do you feel about this teacher? What do you think about this teacher?" And so they'll share, their class with either easy or it was presented well. Easy, by the way, means that they weren't lenient on the student. They presented the information clearly. That's what they mean by easy. So my concern here is your class would probably be packed then because you're offering a low cost or no cost textbook. You're presenting things in a more relevant way for them versus a textbook. So if there's another Rhetoric 101 teacher who's not doing that, then we probably won't have people enrolling for that class, or that faculty member might not have the time to research. How do we assure that everybody's teaching same material?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are important questions. I think part of why we do this, right, is to have more instructors have access, right, and know that they'll be supported through that process. But I think ultimately, not all classes are being taught the same way now, right?
Right.
So that's part of, that freedom for faculty to, engage with their subject material and teach in the way that they want, right, in their classes. But I think that's part of this work too, and why Joe and I continue to do these kinds of workshops is, even like Joe said in his department has done a wonderful job. The English department does a great job of kind of sharing resources and supporting each other in pursuing this option. And so I think our goal is, right, to continue to do this and to continue to support and have faculty know they're supported through this process if they're interested in doing that.
So faculty members of the same courses, they do meet then and discuss oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty department by department. One example from my department is we rolled out this no-cost Blackboard shell last semester. This semester was the first one it was available for. And we have 2 instructors who are using it this semester who had never done this before. And they were people who didn't have the time, they couldn't put in the time investment to create their own thing, like I did. But as soon as they found out there was an option, they said, especially one of them, very passionately, I hated that textbook. I am so happy we have this now, right? And she's so excited about it. So yeah, I think it is a slow process to give more accessibility, especially to those who don't have hours and hours to create their own. But it's happening on this campus, across campus. Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
How can you find that in the various different departments?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the critical. I'm in the hospitality. I have yet to hear about what you just said.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how do you find it for your particular department?
Yeah, you might be a little bit of a trailblazer. Do you know anything about HIA? Is Christopher doing anything?
I don't know. I don't know what movement is happening there in terms of, I don't know if it's.
Because remember, there's culinary.
Yeah.
I'm not in culinary.
Right.
I'm in the lecture courses that are
Yeah.
largely electives. So they're the lecture courses. So a lot of times when people say, oh, you can go to this, that doesn't help me because that's all culinary.
Right.
You might be a trailblazer in your area.
What are your courses? What courses do you teach?
Hospitality marketing, intro to hospitality, tourism,
Okay.
special events, and convention management.
Okay.
So when I tell people that, like, I was sitting down hopefully to get a mentor,
Yeah.
in my class this year. But the gentleman I was working with couldn't find a mentor because there's nobody that had, marketing is one thing, hospitality marketing is another.
Right.
So
Right.
they couldn't find somebody that knew anything about hospitality marketing. And that's what I'm worried about here. It sounds good, but how does it really work to my name?
So yeah, I can also, and we can talk about a few of these, but then when we end, I can also show you in kind of that live guide that we have and to where you can start looking for some of these resources. And then also know that that's kind of the work of our committee, and I'm always, happy to help kind of start that process of where to look and where to find some resources that might be the most helpful
That's
for you.
about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, for a lot of instructors who didn't jump on this ship right away, like I did, the process has started with a workshop like this, and then that's step 1, and then step 2 is they come to one of us and they say, I want to look into this. Can we sit down together and look into it?
Yeah.
And we can help with the research. We can look and see how it might work.
Yeah, I've already had 3 of those kinds of meetings this semester.
Yeah.
Already of just one-on-one, let's explore what's available.
I'll see you.
Yeah.
That's how it starts. And it's only not over.
Exactly.
Trailblazer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And what's important to know is that you do have academic freedom on this campus to choose your materials that fit your course. It doesn't have to go with your curriculum or anything like that. That's part of what's in your prerogative. So you can do it. You can get your whip and make it happen.
That comes under the department of approval, right? You have the freedom to do that. Availability of resources, right? Building the support to help you access these materials and explore them.
Yeah.
So from my discipline, it's a little bit challenging because, accounting, just like math homework, okay? So what I have done so far, I do not require my students to purchase a physical copy of the book, which was very expensive. It was almost $200.
Wow.
So all of my students in my classes, they now can purchase an access code online, that gives them access to an ebook,
Mhm.
that gives them access to all the other materials, and that's where they do their homework. So while I could find a lot of materials, that is up to date, that is in agreement with the current laws, accounting regulations, that is not a problem. I could find that easily, and I actually, in my department, we purchased an annual subscription to the FASB standards codification database. So it costs us $250, and all of the students can do research in that.
Mhm.
And
Beautiful.
any book, accounting book out there is pretty much a copy of that
Sure.
database. So that is fun. My biggest concern is, how do I take that hands-on homework and quizzes and everything else experience that they now have with McGraw-Hill or with Cengage. Because if I remove that, well, then we're going years back, and they will have to do their homework, paper and pencil. And I will not be able to grade it in as much detail as the software is grading it for them. And, as soon as they do something, submit an incorrect answer, they get an immediate feedback. Okay, I will not be able to do that.
Right,
So my cost right now is about $120 for that online access, which is an improvement compared to $180, but it's still way above the $75. And I'm not quite sure there's anything available for free that would substitute, Cengage or McGraw-Hill or Pearson or Wiley Class. I mean, I've worked with all of those.
Yeah. The adaptive learning tends to come
it's
up in these conversations, right?
Yeah.
And so I think one piece, right, is maybe providing, since there are some resources that can support student learning, I would say maybe making those available for students if they do want something in print, not feeling that they have to purchase, right? If they get the ebook, but they still, there are still students who want to be able to have something in print. So either having something on course reserve, right, or having another free resource available, like, hey, you don't have to buy this textbook, but there's going to be some print materials that
And I
would be
have,
helpful as
I have
well.
everything on Blackboard
Yeah.
and every single class because I allow them to just purchase the ebook. I bring
Right.
handouts, so they're
Great,
taking
yeah,
notes,
so they have, the
both.
physical stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but the adaptive learning piece, I think that's also where we go to back to that, like, not one size fits all, right? If you as an instructor are saying that this is the best learning materials for my students, we're not necessarily saying, right, completely disregard that. If that's how you feel like this is going to be the best learning tool for your students, then, that's what you should continue to use. Like Joe said, right, it all comes back to the instructional quality of your class and the quality of your course. And so if you feel like that is where students are getting the best experience in your class, then that's a tool that you should use.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it's that adaptive
Yeah, I know.
material.
Yeah, and honestly, even the name of our committee, it speaks to the cost. Like, we're really concerned about cost and access. But I think we've had conversations in these spaces where we've just helped instructors figure out what supplemental materials they can give to students on Blackboard in terms of copywriting things. And so even that's within the purview of what we do, even though it's not saving them.
As a business class, no problem at all because
Right.
it's just a different type of homework that they're doing. But for accounting, it's just
Accounting, math.
Yeah, I
right.
wish I could
It's
do
really
something.
tight.
But I just
Those
don't.
fields.
Yeah.
It's a tough.
Yeah, it is.
And we found that too in some of the health careers as well, because
Yep.
their textbooks are so tied to their accreditation, right? There's that strong relationship there as well.
Yeah, it feels like with those textbooks, there's a lot of standardization, and they have to be updated.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas in my field,
Yeah.
they're not standardized. These textbooks weren't written for our student population, and they'll put readings in there like 20 years old.
And
So-
it's still relevant. A role in accounting from 20 years ago, it's absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else to add, or some?
Oh, this one. So, if anyone's interested on the side of not only adopting these for your own course, but being involved campus-wise, these are the things that we're doing. We have a committee represented by faculty members across the campus. And so part of it's raising awareness of low cost, no cost, which is what we're doing right now at this moment. So hello. We gather student feedback. So everyone that does a low cost or no cost course, we have a survey that we put directly in their Blackboard shelves, and it surveys the students, and that allows us and the instructor to know how students are liking it, if they see it as an improvement or not over the textbook course. And results are like pristine. It's like 98% or something like that of students say they would recommend it to another student and they would take another one. And so there is a lot of demand for them when students find out about them. So it's something, but that's because it's really helping the classes be better classes. We keep track of who's participating. That's how we add up those numbers and figure out how much money we're saving students overall. And then in the future, we do want to publicize the course offerings so students and counselors and advisors are able to locate them for the students. And then also we want to do research and really see data-wise how this is impacting retention and success. Because we think it might be, but we want to be able to know that's the case with data.
Let's chat.
Yeah, that's how you can find us. Those email addresses.
Oh, that's nice. I
Yeah.
was just gonna ask you for that.
There you go. You can write down our contact information, and then as we close, I just wanted to show you how to navigate to that library guide, and that's going to be a great launching place if you're interested in and just exploring more on your own. And then also, we're always available to chat and walk you through that as well.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, don't hesitate at all. If you're thinking about anything related to textbooks, please shoot me an email. Love to talk about it.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'll put this slide back up. But I just wanted to pull up the library's website. So if you go to Triton.edu, then at the very bottom in this black bar, you're going to see that link to library. And so this is library.triton.edu is the URL. And then if you go to the top where it says subject guides, and then under this drop-down menu, it's called low cost, no cost textbook alternatives, and that's the one that I screenshotted in the presentation. But again, the URL here is library.triton.edu/LCNC. So that's a way to get back to it directly. And you can see on the left-hand side where these textbook alternatives, we have links to repositories that have collections of all various types of course material. So you can see there's MIT OpenCourseWare, Yale courseware, OER Commons. This is everything from worksheets to PowerPoints to course material. The open textbooks gets a little bit more narrow. These are just repositories for these open textbooks, these textbook length, right, and different disciplines. So you can click on these and search for your discipline and look at full textbooks that are open, that are freely available to use. And then the resources by discipline, you can see we've built them out by kind of these subject areas, and you can see the different resources that we've started to curate based on those subject areas. So you can kind of click through, take a look at yours, and see the different materials that might be helpful for you. And again, this is always a work in progress, and as we work with faculty, we continue to add to this. So if your area is not necessarily represented, that means that we may have not worked with someone from your area yet.
It doesn't look like it's represented.
And then we
based on
can,
that.
yeah, then we can start building it out. But that's where searching the open textbook or the course materials, these are much larger repositories. This is just what we've worked on so far for disciplines on our campus. Okay, I'll go ahead and put up our contact information again. In case you didn't get a chance to.
This is actually really good that you have shared this because I'm finishing up my ION classes.
Yeah.
And I have to find something on the OER. That
Oh,
will
yeah.
There you
help
go.
a lot.
Excellent.
So even if I can't implement,
Yeah.
the no text.
Helps you with your ION. Great.
Now I know where to find it in one place.
Any last questions for us?
What's the full name of your committee that you're in?
Low cost, no cost textbook alternatives. We wanted a name that represented the entire spectrum, but it is a little bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I don't mean to go over anybody else here, but I just, I thought this was very helpful, really did. But I'm concerned I'm gonna go on this and I'm not gonna find what I need for my discipline.
Well, let's take a look, right?
Yeah.
Let's take a look and we'll see what's out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come and see.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Please
Good to see
do.
you. I'll hunt you down.
Sounds good.
Please do.
I'm in this very building on the first floor.
Here on the
Where are we
road.
right now? On that side. I'm right below us. My
Oh,
office
is it right
my office, if you could drill through this floor, you would probably land on my desk. So now you know where I am. Come find me.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here, and please fill out the evaluation forms. We definitely look at those to help us update our presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So nice to meet you.